So, in terms of, I'm just curious about your thoughts with regard to thinking about what kind of education is the kind of education for young enterprising minds who are growing up in the homeschool, classical Christian school movements. As they're thinking about the future and thinking about what kind of education should I be looking for in my college years,
well,
what would you say to them?
let me say what I would. The myth I think we need to bust first, which is the modern American college system abandoned the classical Christian curriculum that had been built over centuries and abandoned it in favor of the elective system, the system of majors and then electives. So the smorgasbord cafeteria approach to higher education is predominant everywhere. And so much so that the old liberal arts education is just sort of rolled into that. And liberal arts education is thought to be vo-tech training for English teachers. Instead of what it is, the education of a free man, the education of a free woman, teaching them how to think about society, life, civilization, God, and how how to solve and tackle these problems wherever they go. So if you think of higher education as job training,
Right.
That's the problem. Now, nothing against jobs, nothing against training for jobs, and nothing against training for jobs in institutes dedicated to teach you to do that. The world needs engineers, the world needs doctors, the world needs brain surgeons, the world therefore needs the schools in which those people will be trained.
Sure.
But I would argue that before we get to the point of training in the craft mechanics of these various disciplines, you have to train students who they are. Before you teach them this is a scalpel, and that's a brain, you have to say, what is man?
Right.
Right. And that's got to be in their bones first. And so I believe that higher education should be built on the foundation of a liberal arts education. And this is not either or. This is simply the ranking.
Sure.
What order it comes.
Right.
What order things come in. So what I want to do is fight against the. New St. Andrews College has no majors. It's got one degree. It's not an elective system. We train in liberal arts and culture, and that's what you get a degree in. And what I want people to understand is that we are doing that not because we expect all our graduates to then go teach Latin in a classical Christian school.
Yes.
We're doing that because we think some of them will. We think some of them will go on to be movie makers, some will go on to be writers, some will go on to be military men. We expect them to fan out from a liberal arts education, just as people did for centuries before the modern elective system was developed. So that's probably the main thing I would want to do. Liberal arts education is training for life. It's not training for a job.
Right.
And both training for life and training for a job are necessary and good, and 3 cheers for both of them.
Right.
But if you train for a job first and then you get the job, you're not going to have time to figure out life
Later on. Yes, sure.
Right.
I agreed with that. Interesting question is I've sort of spoken at different schools, particularly classical Christian schools, but I think this is also true of maybe homeschoolers who are also devoted to sort of the classical approach through high school. A common question that is raised is, I agree with what you're saying. That's why we're doing what we're doing. But we've just completed 12 grades of doing this,
Right.
And so wouldn't it be time for me to go off and to get that vocation that you've been talking about the good of?
Yeah. So if I've gone through a classical Christian education and I've read Homer, done that, read Ovid, done that, read Paradise Lost, check.
Right.
And now you want me to go to New St. Andrews and do it all again? The classics are not books that are on a checklist that you tick off. Some of them,
We won't say which ones.
we won't say which ones, but some of them I'm glad. Mark Twain defined a classic as a book nobody wants to read, but everybody wants to have read.
Yes.
And some of them are just there because of their influential position in history. They're not all that, how'd that happen, you think? But so you read that, and that's that goes by the way. But if you go through the corpus of the world's great literature,
Yeah.
and you say, now on to life,
Right.
then you weren't paying attention the first time.
Right.
These are topics and subjects and books and writers who will repay revisits.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go back to them, you will discover depths and angles, and there are a number of books that when I've gone back to, I've been, and this is C.S. Lewis's argument in Experiment and Criticism, that a great book is one that repays rereading
Mm-hmm.
when you go back to it. And so the students that we have who come from classical Christian backgrounds, whether homeschool or schooling, who come to New St. Andrews and they read a number of the books again, when they've gone through it, they say, oh, I see why I'm doing this.
Right.
And it's not until I think a student's 21 or 22 where the concrete is basically set and they're prepared to tackle life.
Right.
If you're 17 or 18, I think there's still training to do if you're going to go in this academic direction.
Right. So you've sort of already said it, that there's a difference between reading, say, The City of God when you're 16 and when you're 22.
Right.
And the difference is you've changed an awful lot during that time. And so you would argue that especially during those sort of college years, there's a crucial, as you said, cement setting exercise that higher education can serve.
Right.
A very valuable function.
In my experience, basically, and of course, I'm not saying this as someone who can peer into souls, but
Right.
I'm saying this as a pastor watching a lot of people. I believe the most critical times in a young student's life are ages 1 to 5 and ages 18 to 22. I think that they are crucial periods where you want godly oversight, encouragement, mentorship. God, and of course with the 1 to 5, it's mom and dad, and that's God's design. But 18 to 22 is like that same period over again, only with the larger Christian community. It's like you're born into your home, and those 4 or 5 years are welcome to our family.
Right.
And then 18 to 22, it's welcome to your world. And it's a critical time of interaction. And so I don't think it's smart to take a kid up to 16 or 17 and then say, you're on your own.
Okay.